But I think there's something very big to like keeping your mind like right, like knowing when you're starting to go down that rabbit hole of like, oh God, where's my life going? Oh God, I'm not really a developer. Sometimes all of those thoughts hit me, and it's just like, what am I doing?
Like many of the guests who have appeared on this podcast, I first met Jon when we were both teaching boot camps for Bubble. His path in this space is quite similar to my own. Discover no code, play around inside of the Bubble editor until you're somewhat competent, convince your first client to give you money to build their app, and start freelancing after that. Winging it at every step of the way until things eventually start to make a little more sense. Jon lives and breathes no code. He spends his days building inside of the Bubble editor and his evenings streaming about no-code related topics across social media. He's a friend in the space, and if you're interested in learning how to start a freelancing business as a solo entrepreneur, he knows as much as anyone. Together, Jon and I discuss his philosophy towards freelancing, his views on the no-code space in general, and a whole lot more. If you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to like this video and to subscribe to the channel. You're listening to User Stories, episode number 8 with Jon Melo. When you were first learning Bubble, you came to the platform and you were trying to learn it, and I want to read a quote that I found that you wrote. It says, you basically, as far as I understand, you found it difficult to learn, so you kind of shelved what you were trying to build, this project that you were working on. You said, I got an app that was coded in Ruby, so you went to go hire another developer to code it out for you. I got an app that was coded in Ruby and was very far from what I had asked for. Basically, I paid $15,000 for something that I couldn't use. Expensive lesson, but the experience gave me the motivation that I needed to learn the Bubble fundamentals. So when you think back to that experience, what went wrong?
A lot of it was from my end, honestly. Truthfully, if I'm being completely honest with myself, I didn't know what I was like. I gave them the specs that I wanted that day. And, I didn't really account for any kind of user feedback or, learning more about the problem that I was solving. Was I even solving a problem that anybody cared about? So I would say I want to say 80% of that was my doing. And about 20% was the developers not really taking the time to understand what I was really asking for, or pushing back on me saying what you're asking for doesn't really make sense technically, from a technical perspective. Can we think about it this way? Maybe that would be the thing that I would have put on the development team more, is you should have pushed back on me and tried to tease out what I was really asking for a little more. And that's kind of what I try to do with the people that I work with now. So again, it's an expensive mistake, and it's actually more than 15K. It was probably closer to 30 or 40 altogether. But yeah, that's why I tend to kind of push back on when people act like they say they have a feature set that they want to build, and right out of the gate it's a very large feature set. I try to tease that out for what's the core problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, man, I had a similar experience, and I think that I've heard this story many times where people come to Bubble or no code solutions because they've had this kind of horror story in the past where they've tried to hire developers and it hasn't worked out. And in my particular experience, I was very much at fault too. I remember thinking back, we were trying to build this live streaming solution for English lessons. So remember that I forget what it was called, but that game show app that it used to be really popular in 2017, 2018. It was a live HQ. Game show. Yeah, exactly. So we were trying to build essentially a version of that, but for English lessons. And I remember trying to build some of it on Bubble, thinking that it was quite a difficult undertaking, and going to hire a developer to do it. And my expectations were just so crazy. I wanted him to build me this, live streaming app that was just pixel perfect design, and my budget was embarrassingly low. But he didn't push back either. And I think now, having been in both sides, having worked as a freelancer myself and having been in that situation, there's this interesting dynamic where it's kind of hard to find that sweet spot of where do you push back, because a lot of people, they come to you as a freelancer who has this expertise and these skills that they need, and they just want you to build what they have in their mind, very much like I did at the time. without getting that kind of pushback or let's say like business advice about, oh, you should actually take small steps and iterate. So I guess like now that you've been in both situations too, as a freelancer and as someone hiring a freelancer, what's that sweet spot for you? How do you deal with that as a freelancer? The optimal amount of pushback?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think how do I think about that? I think I'm testing for the open-mindedness of the client too, as much as they're vetting me now, being on the technical side of it now, right? Like coming at this from the other angle. I know the good part is that I kind of know what they don't know already. So I'm positioning myself more as like a consultant, like, let me help you figure this thing out and not make the same mistakes that I made, right? Like I can point to my mistakes and how I wasted so much money as a real life use, like that really happened to me. So I think when I explain that to them and I use myself as an example of what not to do, they find that more compelling. And it also starts like the trust of like, well, why would you tell me this if I'm contracting you to pay me? Like, it's not in your best interest to tell me this, right? So like, I think that's the start of like the trust that I want to build with that person.
Right. And so why do you tell them that? Again, because there is this tension that everyone feels, I think, or that everyone has felt who has been a freelancer, where it's like, maybe you have an idea about what you should build, how the project should go, but the client wants to pay to have things done a certain way. So why like go out of your way to push back?
Because like as a business or an agency or a freelancer, you're supposed to make money, right? And the question, I've had this, conversation quite a few times with different people, and everyone's kind of stands on a different, everyone's kind of in the middle, but they either lean one way or the other. Why do we, for me, I just know that what they have in their mind today, if I do exactly what they're saying without giving them kind of that, like that thought process, I know they're not going to be happy with the end result. And that's ultimately going to come back to me and reflect on me as the person that they paid to build this thing for them. So it's self-preservation, I think, in one aspect, and the other is like, I don't want them to go through what I went through. Like I was like, yes, it was a learning experience and I'm better off for it today, but if I can help somebody avoid doing that and they build something useful that resonates with people, isn't that a better story? Isn't that better for everybody? They're going to look to me like, oh man, Jon helped me with that. I'm going to be happy that I have a product on, like I helped somebody build something that I can call a case study, and it's useful, it's out there and people are using it. So like, I guess I kind of look to that long term where like, all right, I can charge 10K and just build whatever this person is asking me for, but it's not a great story. I feel like the story is kind of important.
I want to read something that you tweeted today that I think is related to what we're talking about. So it wasn't today, it was yesterday, but this is your tweet. Even though you know what you want today, the end users will use the app in a very different way than you initially intended. And I should give some context here. This is like a series of tweets that you laid out for fellow freelancers. It's some like language that they could use to talk to clients. So speaking to a client, imagine that. Even though you know what you want today, the end users will use the app in a very different way than you initially intended. As such, we take an iterative approach to development that takes users' feedback into consideration at each step. Please treat this estimate like a living, breathing document that will change as we build and learn together. And what I thought was really interesting about this series of tweets is that you kind of like build in this idea of partnership into the language of like your estimate or whatever it is that you're giving the client there, right? Like you're saying, this is going to be an iterative approach that we're taking. It's going to happen slowly over time. And you're positioning this dynamic much more as a partnership. So why, I guess, like, do you prefer that approach? Do you prefer working with clients who are more kind of like a partner than a client? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it definitely speaks to the way, like, I come from a consulting background, right? So everything that I've learned is like the learnings that I think I apply to what I'm doing now are like build trust with your client, make yourself a trusted advisor for them, and they will never leave you. If they trust you, it doesn't matter how technically good you are. I mean, that matters, but it's more important about how much they trust you. So like, that's, I guess, like in my messaging, in my tweets, in even the language that's on my website, it's like, yeah, we're going to be in this for the long haul. This is going to be a process. And it's not like, like 3 months, here's your MVP, you pay me and I'm out. I'm not comfortable with that. I think because of how I was trained to work with clients, and I just don't like, that's sometimes what people want. Right. So like, and that's why I say to this dude, like, there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. If that's what the client is asking for, it's just not the way that I prefer to work. I like to have that kind of steady, like, I know the personality type that I'm going to be working with. That's a big thing for me. Right. Like, I don't want to have, the more you're like out looking for clients and, the more you're kind of cycling through these short-term jobs, you're getting a whole different, like, you're cycling through different personality types, and you don't know they're going to treat you, how you're going to treat them, how you're going to interact with them. That scares me, like not knowing who I'm going to work with. So this idea of long term is like, it's a little more selective. I can choose to work with you long term, and you could choose me, and we like each other, and we're okay kind of continuing this down like a more I don't know what the right word is. Not robust, like long-term path.
Well, partnership.
Partnership, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to be careful with that language too, because it's also, I mean, like the extreme end of that is like you're a co-founder of the business that they're building, right? And sometimes the lines can be a little bit fuzzy there. But I was I would say when I was freelancing, I was more in the camp that you're in the sense that like I really hated when I was looking for clients all the time, I really hated the end of a project, because oftentimes what happened was like, hey, we finished our agreement here. Here's your app. It's built. It works. And you pass it off to the client, and they're like, well, what happens if I want to add this other thing or if something breaks? And there's just like this, I always hated that. I was never good at it because I wanted to keep going and keep building different apps for clients. And eventually what I did was I became more of a partner with one particular client. And that led to me going, working as a technical co-founder essentially on his app. But I guess like, how does that work from a business perspective for you, that approach of like being very selective with who you work with?
From a business approach, right? So here's the thing, like, I don't really know kind of where I even fit into this like larger no code and low code space. I know that I want to be here. I know that there's no doubt in my mind, like this is where I want to be. This is what I want to work on. The community that we have on Twitter and all the people we talk to, I'm in the right spot, but I'm not 100% sure what I want to do. Right? Like I've dabbled quite a bit, right? We've done the education stuff. We've done the boot camps. We've done the freelancing. I'm dabbling in content now, doing the stream, trying to, put out shorts and videos about this stuff. But I really don't know like what entirely to focus on. So the extent,
what are the options? What are you thinking?
I mean, these are the ones that I just mentioned are like what I've tried already. And the thing that I'm exploring now, I think the most is how to help international bubble developers and agencies break into the US market. They all, like a lot of them want to have access to this market because it's a large market, and just having US clients opens up a lot of opportunities. But there's a perception issue, right? Like a lot of, it's like the freelancers abroad, right? It's going to be hard to get in touch with them. They're on different time zones. Like this is what people based in the US, and I imagine Canada too, I'm not really sure, but that's what they think. And that I think I understand why that perception is there, but there are so many good developers and good solid bubble agencies that are completely reliable that want a shot. And to me, like that's kind of the area that I feel like I've been focusing most of my attention on in the last like 3 or 4 months. So I have my client, right? Like I have a client that's regular income for me, and I've been doing that, and that's kind of like, so is that a business? I guess I'm earning money. You know what I mean? I'm earning money being in this space. I can earn enough to sustain myself. All my income comes from like bubble and no code related projects and this kind of network that I'm building. But is it a like a scalable business? I don't know yet. I don't know.
Do you want to have a scalable business? I mean, that's what's so interesting about this space too. I can totally empathize with all of the I don't know if they're called challenges or what, but like I guess just like the challenge of deciding what you like to do, because there's so many different opportunities that come up all the time. And I don't know about you, but I like everything too. I loved teaching.
Yeah.
I love building. I didn't love so much being a freelancer and dealing with a lot of the stuff that you have to do outside of like building.
Yeah.
Like I hated writing contracts. I hated all of that stuff. I hated scoping out projects, and like dealing with scope creep was my least favorite thing because I'm quite an agreeable person, and I tended to just like be too agreeable when I maybe should have said like, no, we can't build this thing that we weren't planning to build.
Right.
But yeah, I guess like, so going back to that one thing that you've been working on, helping connect international freelancers and agencies with the US market. How did you stumble upon that problem?
I've been partnering with, at one point I was getting more freelance and agency work that I could really do. So I partnered with an agency based in Poland, Have No Code, Emil and Kamil. They're the founders, and they were just, how do I say, like their pain points. I kind of learned from them, like their pain points. They're growing their client base in the US, and these are the things that they say. Like sometimes just being like based in the US is helpful. You know what I mean? Like just for a perception issue. And they've kind of talked to, like that's how I initially identified it. And they're so reliable, and I could literally like just give them work, close my eyes, and expect it to get done. Like how many devs can you say that for? You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't. Developers are like notoriously unreliable, and so when I find like a partner like that I could just like trust blindly, I kind of latch on. And then, just naturally working with them, we started to like just talk about each other's businesses and what the challenges are, and I'm starting to hear the same sentiments echoed from other agencies and freelancers that I work with, I just had casual conversations with. So that's kind of how I stumbled upon it. Again, I don't know what's here. I'm just like, it's just something that's interesting to me, and I'm kind of following that and see where it takes me. But that's how.
Are you enjoying the all of the content that you're producing too, like making it and putting it out there?
Yeah, I see this, and this is something that I envy of you, is like your production and your edits are so solid, and mine by comparison, I'm just like, I'm not doing enough here. So like I can put the stream up and I can, have a chat with somebody for 2 hours. But I'm bad at like doing the edits and making something short form to like entice people to actually check the stream out. So I have to improve in that area. I don't love video editing. That's the part that I don't like about the content creation, but I know I need to do it. So I'll probably hit you up at some point and be like, yo, what are you doing? How are you doing?
Yeah, well,
this?
I appreciate the kind words, but I'm still trying to figure it out myself. Like I just got this, I just moved into this place where it's like more of a setup that's conducive to like, I mean, for one, it's quiet and like I can actually just like focus on doing this stuff. But I hate video editing too, man. It's like, it's not something that I look forward to doing. But the reason I was asking about the content is because like, I was going to try to guess at your model. If you are leaning towards this, I know you said that you're still trying to figure it all out, but like I could see a situation where you're producing a lot of content, getting a lot of people coming to you as an authority in the no-code space, wanting their apps built. I imagine that's already happening right now. You said that you were getting more work than you can take on, and then you're kind of like farming this work out to these different agencies. And there's a number of different models that you can take in terms of how that works. But is that what you're kind of thinking as a potential model?
That's definitely one area that I've like, that would make sense, like scale wise. Like if I have an audience that trust me and I have development partners that I trust, like why not? That makes complete sense, right? So yeah, and I love talking about this stuff. Like like this is probably one of my favorite things. Like these kind of chats is one of my favorite things to do. I love to build, but there's also something like when other people resonate with the stuff that you get excited about, and you can just kind of chat about this thing. I love doing this, and that's why I started the stream in the first place. And you know, like that's the part of the content creation that I really enjoy.
Yeah. What about that do you think? Do you like is it the no code space in general that's exciting, or are you someone that like just enjoys talking to people in general about whatever it is? You strike me as a very kind of like extroverted person who likes to have conversations with people, or is it both?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, I like to talk, but I want to talk about stuff that I'm interested about. And this is like an area where, the people in this space just seem like really excited to talk about it. And even I had my brother on the stream, last week, and we were chatting about like kind of the differences in when you should think about using a low code tool and when code is probably going to be the better option. Even that stuff is really interesting to me because I want to get the coding perspective, or the perspective of the coding community on how they're looking at these tools too. And are they thinking of it as a legitimate part of the stack? You know what I mean? To me, that's super interesting because it's like, where do we fit in the broader tech space?
I'm curious to know like where you're at this point in your development career, in terms of like what you're learning, what you're excited about in the no code space, or are you learning code? Are you like, what are you learning these days to further your development skills?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to pick up code where needed. Like I don't just learn to code just for the sake of it. If there's a real need for it, then I do it. And I happily do it. I kind of have to know, like, I think this is something that I've learned about myself about being here and doing this stuff is like, I have to have the reason to learn something. I'm not just going to take a JavaScript like course for the sake of taking it. Right. Like I need a reason. And then that'll give me the motivation to go back in the same way that, I hired those developers and they gave me something that I couldn't use, and then I had to go back and learn Bubble, right? I need the reason in order to stay motivated to do something. Right now, my biggest thing is learning Xano, because I have a business need to be able to import and export large quantities of data and run CRUD operations on them very quickly. The native Bubble database just isn't efficient at. It's not that it can't do it. It's so much extra work. And I've exhausted every avenue for doing this natively in Bubble. I've tried, right? It's not like I was just like, oh, the Bubble database sucks. No, the Bubble database works for like 90% of use cases. But this one was just like, it's just easier to do it in Xano. So that's where I've been learning all of their terminology, the loop for, and the way you can index data, like all that stuff is pretty new. Like I had a solid basis from working with the Bubble database, but there's so much more underlying there that it's exciting. I feel like I'm back at stage one with Bubble again, like it's cool to go a little deeper, I guess, in
for
one
sure.
area.
And I see a lot more of that happening, I think, in all areas of the no code space, let's say, where like a lot of the, like everyone who I know is, they kind of grew up on Bubble, let's say. And, we were just in a meeting with a bunch of people who have been around Bubble for a while. And you see this on Twitter, and it's like a lot of people are talking about using Bubble with other tools like Xano, or if you want to build a mobile app using something like Flutterflow. And I'm really curious to see myself what Bubble's going to do. And I'm curious to know what you think Bubble's going to do in terms of like, if they're going, one of the things that came up in this meeting is like, hey, maybe opening up the platform and facilitating integration with these other tools that, do something better than Bubble currently does would be a good option for the users. What do you think Bubble's going to do on that front? Do you think, because they're kind of a closed garden right now?
Yeah, they are. I really hope that they consider that, because I feel like if they want to be, fulfill their mission of replacing code, that's the only way that they're going to get there, right? Like that's the integration with platforms that go deep, right? Like that, and opening up, even opening up the code base. I know they're big, like with the code export stuff. They don't want to do that, but I just don't see how you get to that level without at least opening it up to people who want to look under the hood and make decisions around that. So I do I see them doing it? I really hope so. I'm betting that they do, because I feel like that's the only way that they're going to like account. Well, okay, let me say this. No, that's not the only way. I think if they are going to fulfill that dream of replacing code, I think they have to go that way. But if they want to just be something like in this lane, like we are the go-to tool for web applications, for small businesses and startups, and we can scale to this point, right? Like, and there's a predefined user, like ideal for this user count and this complexity of functionality, and they want to just live in that space. I think that's okay too. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Like, just being awesome at something you're always going to have users and people that are willing to give you money. But if you want this broader vision of like, we're going to replace code, then like, I don't see how you do that by yourself. It has to be like a very dynamic integrated system like they built with the plugins. Like, Bubble wouldn't be where it is today without plugins. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's a complete platform because of plugins.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you developed many plugins?
I haven't. No, I'm not. My JavaScript is not good enough to create anything useful at this point as a plugin.
But even like one thing, when I was learning a little bit of JavaScript years ago, I remember having the thought, like, if I just learn this stuff, then I'll be able to write code and I'll be able to write all of the Bubble plugins that I want. But the thing that you realize quickly when you get in there is like, the code that you would normally write outside of Bubble is very different to developing plugins. Like, even when you're writing plugins, like you have to do it in a very bubbly way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I appreciate the people that are building plugins, because I don't want to do it. Like,
yeah, they are heroes, true heroes.
I do not want to do it. I never shit on a free plugin, because like that person put something out there for you to consume. Just because it doesn't work the way that you think it should, or it doesn't solve your exact use case, like, show some respect for somebody that like made you a meal for free,
Yeah. People were getting mad at me at one point about this. The first plugin that I made, I put it out for free because I just wanted to contribute something and like practice building a plugin and like see if I could actually do it. It was just like simple HTML audio player. And I put it out there, and then, I think lots of people still use it, but I haven't looked at the code in like over 2 years, I think. And there was a point where people are like yelling at me in the forum to fix it. And I was like, I don't want to, I want nothing to do with this.
Sucks,
like,
bro.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I was like, I can't be bothered to maintain this thing. Like, the code's out there. You can do whatever you want with it.
Exactly. I don't think they realize how much work that is.
Well, it's like, I mean, it's just anything that's open source, man. I think it's like we all are guilty of this. I think just taking open source stuff for granted. I heard this story, I forget what it was. There was this one GitHub repository that was open source and used by like everyone. I can't remember. It's bothering me that I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, it was like ubiquitous, and everyone was using this repository in their code I think it was for testing stuff. I could be wrong about that. But the developer who was maintaining this repository, I think one day just like pulled all of the code, and he did it to make a point. I think it was related to the guy who started Reddit, like Aaron Schwartz. I don't know if you watched that documentary at all. It's a fascinating documentary about his whole story. But anyways, the guy like he pulled the code and was making a point. Like it seems like the point that he was making was, hey, you guys all take this stuff for granted. I'm here maintaining it. It's used by like millions and millions of people. Like, go figure it out yourself. Yeah. Kind of thing. Yeah. There's probably much more to it. But I think that all of us are guilty of that, of just taking open source stuff and stuff that's free for granted.
Yeah. I think I had that mentality when I used WordPress. I tried WordPress a few years back, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on here. It is incredibly confusing. But yeah, it was like, and I chalked it up to it being a shitty platform, which was an immature opinion. It was like, no, it's just like, this is going to take time to learn. There's so many different components to it. And it's probably like Bubble was out at that point. So I'm like, it's probably not the like why it got there in the first place was important. And I really didn't understand it at the time, but I can see how it could get to the point where it's like kind of bloated and confusing. Yeah. But it's open source. Yeah. It's free. Like, it's up to you to figure it out.
I think there's this maybe plays into the just like human psychology. If something is free, we value it less. Like, I'm sure you've done the same thing with with courses or something. Like, I've heard people talk about how they, a few people is like, why did you not give this away for free? If you're set on like helping as many people as possible, let's say, if you're truly not doing this for money, why did you not just give it away for free? And I've heard people say in those situations when they're selling courses, like, you get a different level of commitment from a student who pays for something than from a student who is just signing up for a free course. And I felt that myself when I'm taking courses. Like, if something's free, I'm not as committed to doing it. Whereas if I like purchase something, I'm more invested in it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. I think across the board, there's definitely something psychological about that. I think that's true in the freelancing and agency stuff too. If you underprice yourself, people tend to treat you shittier, right? Like, it's not just it's just something that happens when you underprice whatever you're putting out. People tend to treat it like it doesn't matter how much value you're adding. It just creates that impression in people's mind that's really hard to get over.
Okay, let's dive down that too, because I wanted to go back to freelancing. And I guess, how do you approach that topic of budget? Where does that come in? I know that you're not working with as many clients right now. You just have one. But when you were freelancing, when you were working with lots of different clients, how did you approach the topic of budget?
Yeah, it was the way that I do it now, and the way that I encourage I cannot. So you said it before. You said I hate scoping work. Everybody hates scoping work. Nobody wants to scope work. Like, I don't want to do it. But it's what people expect, and I think this is where the freelancer agency the agency client model really hasn't adapted yet to a tool like Bubble, where the client can have insight and understanding of what's happening in there, where it's like, if we're going to, hold on, let me not go on a tangent. The question was, how do we approach the scoping? The way that I was doing it originally was, I would say, okay, we're going to start with $2,500 development block. And at the end of that, you should have something that you can put in front of people and have them react to and use, right? So when I frame it in that way, and if the prospect is open to it, they're going to narrow down what it is that they're asking for and say, okay, this is what we need, right? We need a login system, we need a basic database structure, and we need to have people being able to upload profile information that somebody else can see. Right? That's something that I can do in like 30, 40 development hours. Right? So with that, if they're open to that approach to things, like, all right, we're gonna build this, put it in front of people, come back and build the next feature from what we learn. That's the way that I prefer it to work, and that's the way that I do it with like the client that I'm working with now. But that doesn't seem to work for everybody. And so, like, I think not going too far out in the build is where I'm comfortable, right? Like, that's the way that I approach it. And it always winds up going further. You know what I mean? There's always a next step. There's always another feature. It's not like we just do this and we're done. It's like, no, we're going to keep going until we get to a point where it's like, all right, now we've learned as much as we possibly can about this, and we know what we're building, right? Even if you wanted to take this and then go code it in React for whatever reason, at least you know now what you're building. because you've done this, you've kind of figured it out, the learning along the way. That was a long-winded way to answer that question. I'm not sure if I really
there's
did.
a lot of good stuff there. I'm curious, have you ever found a project or an idea that is maybe too big to reduce down into like 40 to 50 development hours of work, let's say? Like if you really have to, like a project where the core of it, if you strip away all of the bells and whistles, is still too big to fit into 40 to 50 hours?
Yes, but the reason for that was that they really weren't sure what problem they were solving. That's really what it comes down to. It's not like the technical hours. It's like, we're not sure what we're building. We need further kind of research as to who exactly we're targeting and what problem we're solving for them.
And would you go down that path with a client to figure that out? Or
Yes.
do you prefer to have like it highly scoped out beforehand?
I like, that's really where I like to live. I like to live in that space of like, I'm going to help you learn this stuff. It's not, and that, again, going back to kind of like consultancy over just development or over just app development. I think that's where that's what becomes interesting to me, right? Because you're taking your problem seriously, like, and helping somebody to like kind of see that you don't know what you're building yet. Like there's something like very, if I can convince them of that or not that you don't know what you're building, but you need to do a little bit more work before you start building. So you don't build the wrong thing. I love that. I love that section. I love that being in that space of trying to help somebody through that, because I've gone down the wrong path so many times, and it's like, no, just learn from me. I've done it. I've messed this up. I've had this thought, this mindset that you have right now, and I've done it wrong. Just trust me.
And what's the general antidote to that? Maybe that's the wrong word, but like, let's just say solution to that problem where you don't know. Is it simply just like talking to users more, or do you have other tricks to help people hone in on their idea and really get the core of it down so that you can start building?
My favorite new tool, yep.so. Have you checked that out?
About it. No, I've never seen it.
It's a very simple landing page builder that allows you to test your messaging, test the three main objections that you're going to get from your who you think your users are. And I just think it's such a good way to hone in on what the first priority features are going to be. I love this. I'm telling everybody about yep.so because I'm so happy about it. It's built on Bubble too. It's built on Bubble.
Very cool. Very cool.
I wish I knew that off the top of my head. It's going to kill me that I can't shout them out, but yeah, I don't want to. But yeah, that even so, kind of talking to the users, like I think that's a great place to start because it's so practical. Like throw a landing page out there, see if it resonates with anybody, and then you've got signups. Like you're getting conversion data before you've built anything, and then you can follow up with those people for like you have their email addresses so you can like talk to them. That's my recommendation for anybody testing out a new idea.
Yeah, it's amazing too, just like how much getting clear on copy, like when you're forced to write down what you're actually trying to do. And it's no wonder too that like so many people avoid doing this. I hate doing it myself whenever I have to like really write out something but the result of it is usually a lot of clarity, right? It's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of like, it can be frustrating work. But usually it's, almost always, I think good things happen when you sit down and do that, whether it's development or any area of life.
It's going to be, but I think it's going to be, that's always going to be less work than building something wrong, right? Like take a few hours and build your landing page. And this is I want to be clear, like this page builder is simpler than Card. You know what I mean? Like it'll take you 15 minutes to set this page up and get the words onto it. And, you can change on that if you're not getting any traction, but like, it's that quick, it's that fast. And that's why I'm like in love with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I think you were about to get into it right before you started answering the budget talk, but there was a point in the meeting that we were all on last week with like everyone from Bubble where you mentioned something, and I correct me if I'm wrong about it, but I think you were talking about how there's this new dynamic because of like what no code tools like Bubble are like, in the sense that like we're all inside of the editor. Anyone who's building an app on Bubble, whether even if you're like hiring someone to do it, everyone's just working inside of the editor. And I think what you were getting at is like there's this new dynamic between freelancers and founders that hasn't been figured out yet that you're interested in. And I think you were about to get into it when you started talking about pricing there. But am I right about that? Am I touching on something?
100%. I think a big part, and Gabby is I think built a strong business model around this where they are
Gabby from coaching no code apps.
Sorry, coaching no code apps.
Okay.
I just say Gabby like everyone's gonna know what I'm talking about. Where it's like I think they started kind of as an agency model, and then they kind of morphed into this, I'm going to help you, find your users, and we're going to teach you how to build. Like we're going to just kind of get you unstuck at the points where you need to. So like, I think the spectrum of like agency and freelance work is going to be like, do it for you work, on one side, completely do it for you. And on the other end of that spectrum, it's just going to be like coaching or kind of like helping people get unstuck where they have technical blockers. And somewhere in between that, I think that I lost my train of thought. I think that it's perfectly positioned. Like the founder, I think, can and should take a technical interest in how their application is being built, right? Even if they're like 90% of it is, like the agency that they've hired to do that, they should still be learning about what's going on, how it's being built. Can they change things if they need?
Why do you think that's so important?
Because who knows, like if you can't do that, what happens if that agency goes away? You're 100. If you have no interest in how it's built, or you can't do anything without them, you're 100% relying on them. I don't want to be 100% relying on anybody. Like they may go away. So I think part of that dynamic is now teaching, like helping the founder learn what's happening so that they can make changes. And the way that I have it set up with the client that I work with now is that he builds out all the screens that he wants. He builds those screens out. I'll wire them up.
In Bubble, you mean?
In Bubble. This dude knows Bubble very well.
Did you teach him Bubble, or did he come knowing Bubble?
He learned Bubble kind of on his own, and I kind of helped him through like where he would get stuck with like certain concepts. I would help him through that. And I think the fear there, from the agency side, the objection from the agency side there will be like, well, if he builds in Bubble, what does he need you for, right? And that would be like, the thing that a freelancer agency would say. But I found that it's actually, it makes my life easier because I can focus on the next level deeper. You know what I mean? Architecture decisions, again, the Xano stuff. I have the time to learn that. Whereas he may not, right? And he's more comfortable in design and like, look, John, this is exactly what I want. Wire it up. Perfect. You know what I mean? I didn't have to make any design decisions for that.
Yeah. I think too that like that idea that you're not going to be needed once someone knows how to build in Bubble is like, even if someone does know how to build in Bubble, if they really are like the founder of a business, there's a million other things to focus on too outside of development. So like, it's not necessarily because they can't build it themselves, but it's because they have to like sell the product or, I don't know, focus on marketing or hiring or legal or any of the other million things that one needs to focus on when running a business. I forget who said it. It might've been JJ, where it was like, JJ Englert, he said like it's like 10% of the overall thing. Like the build part is like 10%, and then there's everything else. You know what I mean? Like there's so much that goes into building a business and getting people's attention and finding users. Like the build is by far not the hardest part. Yeah. Do you think there are any pitfalls of knowing how to build yourself if you're trying to like build your own app to sell to people? Or like any downsides to that? Yeah, you get locked into these endless development cycles that go on forever.
Everyone makes this. Everyone does this. Like, there's no way around it. Even knowing better, I can tell. I can see when I'm doing it, and I can't stop myself. There's something like I know how to build, so I'm going to build this. I just have to get this next feature to work. This next feature, and that shit will go on for months, right? It happens to the best of us. It happens to people who code. It happens to no coders. It happens to clients that even if they're hiring an agency to build for them. It's just such it's a danger. It really is, because like you're going to lose money this way. So the knowing how is like it almost is like it's a blessing. Yes, of course I can build stuff, and that makes me feel amazing, and it gives me opens up a lot of opportunities. But knowing like when to exercise restraint is a skill that I'm still learning. Like I have to know when not to build.
Yeah, I find it too myself. Like whenever I'm building something, I get very attached to it, and it blurs my ability to like think rationally about it. Like I'm spending way too much time thinking about this stupid button on the page when really I should be like, I mean, I haven't like built my own product to sell in a very long time. And there were lots of parts of that I didn't like in terms of like the actual business of trying to sell and market a product. I much preferred the building part, but it can also, I think, like you can fool yourself into thinking that you're being productive and doing productive work for your app when really you're just like, wasting time on stuff that you shouldn't be wasting time on, and really should probably just be out there like putting it in front of people and talking to users. That's
the perfect way to say it. You fool yourself into thinking that you're being productive.
Yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, in development and outside of development.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who is maybe watching this, who wants to start out freelancing but doesn't have a portfolio and is just looking for a place to start to get the first client?
The place, I would say, I got my first clients through Twitter, right? So I think probably the best thing that I would say now is to help other people with their problems, and just kind of like, but with their technical problems. Like if you're no bubble, like take the time to maybe, I don't know, check out the forum maybe, or on Twitter, and just see what people are posting and what they're saying is a problem for them, and help them solve that. And I found that usually leads to some kind of either coaching arrangement or a do it for you arrangement. The more that I like, even if I'm just helping someone solve a technical problem, I still do coaching sessions too. Like they remember that I helped them. And that usually comes back to something at some point in the past. I'll give you an example. Like somebody came through my boot camp, and honestly, she didn't even show up to any of the actual live sessions. She just watched the recordings. And months after, I completely forgotten about that boot camp. I never met her, but she recommended me to the Forge, which at McMaster University, which is an accelerator program in Canada. At McMaster University, and they hired me to do my own similar boot camp with the college. So it just came back to me like that stuff happens quite a bit. Like if you're just naturally like trying to help somebody, it just opens up a lot of opportunities down the road. It's long term though. Like it's a slog. It doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere when you're first starting. But to me, those have been the best kind of relationships where that's turned into something.
It's also a nice way to kind of combat this feeling of like, maybe I don't know enough. Because I've seen people, and I've felt this myself too when I first started. And looking back, maybe I didn't know enough. But like, I've seen it with people where like they'll get into this cycle of just taking courses and continuing to try to learn about all of these different things that are not bad to know. But I have a sense watching them that they're like, it's coming out of a place of like, I feel like I don't know enough about Bubble, or whatever I'm trying to learn. So I need to know more before I can actually like start making this a career or a profession or whatever. So like what you just said about helping people, those small little wins, at some point, of course, you do have to make money. But like helping people and it solves that problem because you're helping someone do something that you know how to do. Right. you have that skill at that moment. You can answer that question, or it's like a perfect thing to go and figure out. It's like, hey, if I know how to do this and I can help this person solve this problem. And I agree with you that crazy stuff happens when you start just reaching out and helping people.
The only thing I would add to that is, even if you don't know how to do it, it's a real live like problem to solve, and that is the best way to strengthen your understanding on any platform. I don't feel like that I really even knew Bubble that well until I started teaching it. Like until I started doing boot camps, like I realized until I had to teach it to somebody, I was so blind to all the gaps in my understanding about on the platform itself. And then once I started teaching, I'm like, oh wow, all right, this is like, I need to be able to explain this better. And when you have to explain that to somebody, that's when you're like, all right, I know this deeply now. I can explain a backend workflow and an iteration and a loop, or how to, like how to connect with REST APIs. Like I can explain that at a very deep level now, but I couldn't do that before I started teaching the boot camp. So there is a bit of a chicken and the egg or the egg thing there. It's like, how much do you know versus do I have the will to figure this problem, help this person solve their own problem. And I think anybody can do that, right? As long as you're willing to put in the work. Yeah,
teaching and for sure. And also just like working with people, I find too. I don't think it's a bad idea to join one of the bigger agencies and get some experience working with other developers. Like it's amazing how much working with other people on this platform helps you become a better developer. You just see different ways of doing things. And there's so many, like you said, gaps in your knowledge that become apparent when you're working with other people and putting yourself out there. Yeah. And it can be very easy to not do that. Like even if you're a solo developer, that's fine, I think. But like, finding communities of people who are building and interacting with them and learning about different ways that they're doing things is super helpful, I've found.
It just forces you out of your comfort zone. It forces you out of the way that you think things should be done. There's infinite number of ways to approach any problem in Bubble and development. And, seeing how somebody set it up and trying to make it work for them, that just like, it does nothing but strengthen your understanding of different approaches to solving problems. And at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're solving problems all day. Right. Like that. Right. That's the biggest thing that we're, if I had to call out one thing, you need to be a problem solver to do this type of work.
You said you got your first client on Twitter, and we've talked about content a little bit, but I know that you're putting out a lot of content. You're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn, you're streaming, you're all over the place. How much of that is you putting that out there because you enjoy it and you enjoy just kind of like you said, having conversations inside of this community? And how much of it is strategic in the sense that like you're building your personal brand and working on that?
Good question. Oh my God. I did not get on any social media at all until 2020. So I was very late to social media. I had LinkedIn. Actually, I was on LinkedIn, but I wasn't active. Like I would just, post profile stuff. I didn't start posting content regularly until late 2020, like December of 2020. And I've kind of cycled through strategic Twittering, like tweeting just for like, getting attention and trying to fill up boot camps and trying to get clients. I've cycled through that. I realize that I enjoy myself the least when I'm doing that, and it just feels forced.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's like I want something in return for what I'm putting out there, and that just and I can do that for maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, and until I lose complete motivation to do it. The stream feels effortless, and it's probably adds more value than anything that I can possibly tweet, because I can answer people's questions live. And I don't feel like this sucks when I'm doing it. It's fun. Like I'm doing something that I enjoy doing. But yeah, like I've been at the, I kind of, right now I'm in a space where it's mostly just like, I'm only going to do the things that feel natural and feel authentic. Right. And I don't care how long it takes me to build that personal brand, because again, I'm already in the space that I'm supposed to be in. So I'm not on any kind of time frame. Like if this takes 10 to 20 years to get a referral network set up, like I'm okay with that. Like I'm not in a rush. And so like, yeah, I think so now I would say, now that I have like a more like take it easy, like this stuff's going to happen when it's going to happen kind of mindset. I think it's more for the personal brand and not as much strategic.
How much of that too is the security of having one client who it seems like you're working with full time? The reason I ask is because I feel the same way, like with this podcast, and it's such a relief for me to be able to like do this stuff and not have to worry about trying to sell someone something.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with selling stuff on a podcast or putting out content for the sake of selling stuff. Of course there's nothing wrong with that. But I love being able to do it without feeling that pressure to do anything. And I feel the same way about it where I'm just kind of, of course I hope that it gets bigger and that one day it'll take off, but like I don't have really a time frame on it. I'm happy to just do this, and in worst case scenario, if nothing happens, like I'm still enjoying it. Yeah. And I think the reason I'm able to do that now is because I have a full-time job. And so that was part of my question, is like, how much of that do you think is, in your situation, the security of working with this one client and not having to go out and like get more clients constantly?
Oh, I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for this particular client, right? Like that's my main source of income. But I'm also confident in my ability to find another client, right? So like I know how to, like, that's one thing that I've, in working for myself, I know what I need to do now, right? I can, if I wanted more clients, I could have more clients. I don't want to work with any other clients. I like working with this client, but if it ever push came to shove, I know how to make money to support myself, and that's something that I've never had. I've never had that before, 2019 when I went all in on the bubble stuff. So that's kind of it's scary, but it's also comforting at the same time. It's like, I'm going to be all right. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. I wonder if that kind of like base level anxiety of, well, maybe this could all go away. If that feeling ever goes away,
I don't think
no matter
so.
No matter how far you make it. Like maybe Jeff Bezos doesn't worry about that. He's set. I'm sure you reach like a certain, I don't know, maybe though, who knows? What do you think?
I mean, there's some days where no matter, you just wake up and you're thinking about bad shit, right? It just doesn't, there's just certain days. I don't know. Or even there's certain parts of days, and then, you kind of snap yourself out of it. But I think there's something very big to like keeping your mind like right, like knowing when you're starting to go down that rabbit hole of like, oh God, where's my life going? Oh God, I'm not really a developer. Oh God, Bubble's going to go away. Like there's so like I was an HR consultant. Like I have no business in the app development space. No business like speaking about it, like sometimes all of those thoughts hit me and it's just like, what am I doing? Like this is crazy.
Yeah. Could I read a quote for you? Cause I actually wrote this down. I scanned, if you haven't noticed already, your, the article that you wrote for your bootcamp profile on Bubble, and was pulling some quotes from there that I thought were particularly interesting. And There was one that you just kind of alluded to. So this was before you stumbled upon Bubble. You said, I helped tech companies with their HR practices. I always wanted to start a business, but was too scared to make the jump from such a cozy job. Plus, I had no idea what type of business I wanted to run. Working with such innovative companies had me feeling like a spectator in the game of life. I loved that last phrase. It was so interesting to me, a spectator in the game of life. Like, can you dive into that if you can remember back to that time? Why did you feel like a spectator in the game of life?
I knew from a very early age that I wanted to work for myself. I have it, but I just had no like, and that's like what I'm glad. Like I forgot that was even up there, that profile. But that's so like it's true. Like I know that I wrote that. Because from a very like I knew I always had different ideas of what business I would start. HR consulting, when I was doing that, I was kind of planning a sidestep out into, so I always knew that. But working with the company that I worked for was TriNet, and the companies that I was like helping, they were all tech companies, right? And they all had these like cool, like I would go to their offices and they all had these cool vibes and like, the
beer on tap and everything.
Yeah, all that stuff. Like your WeWorks and like it was right. Kind of intoxicating to be in that environment. But like I wasn't really a part of it, like I was helping them, but I worked for a large corporation, and that was I felt like I was missing out. But I think really what I was feeling is that I don't think I'm ever really going to be really fulfilled unless I can work for myself. unless I can build something, like that, build something, know that I can build something from the ground up. I don't know why. I'm not really sure why.
Is it the freedom of just like having your own schedule, or like the flexibility that you think it is, or if you had to pinpoint it?
I think a lot of that is a myth. I think you had a great conversation with Kelly about this. The flexibility and, being your own boss, a lot of that is glamorized.
It really is, man. Like I took a full-time job now, and it's amazing how in ways I actually feel more free in a sense, because, when the end of the day comes around, I can turn my computer off and do whatever I want to do. And I could have done that before when I was freelancing or when I was working on this other business, but I couldn't really. And I was really bad at it, and I didn't do it. Like I had, 3 years of evidence that I just didn't. I would work terrible hours late at night. I would be constantly thinking about it. And there is this sense of freedom that I have right now, and this part of working a job that I do really enjoy, being able to kind of shut things off. So I agree. It is kind of maybe, I don't know about myth, because I think there's more to flexibility and freedom than just like the hours you work, I guess. But yeah, what do you think that is?
I think a big part of it is choosing who I work with. That is something very important to me. Like, I want to be able to choose who I'm working with. And so that's a big part of it. I think it comes down to, I think it's a fear of mine. Like, so I think the original question was like, why is that important to me? I think it's a fear of being dependent on something. At any point, a company that you work for can say like, we're done with you, and like, I've seen it happen. And just the idea that like, yes, my client can fire me tomorrow, and that's, perfect. That's, always in the back of my mind. Like, I have to do a good job. I don't want to let this person down. But I can figure out how to do that again, and that's something that you don't get with like, you'll have to go and then you get another job. I guess I'm kind of like talking myself out of my own argument, but it's like, I think just I can rely on myself, and I know that I can, like, I'm in control of which direction I go in. I think that's where the comfort comes from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Okay, last question for you.
Yeah.
I don't know why this popped into my head, but I think I read this. Did you know Pat Flynn?
I've heard the name.
He is like an OG in the online business space, let's say. And he's a podcaster, and he's written a lot of books about, I think like his company is called Smart Passive Income. And I think I heard this exercise for the first time in one of his books that I read. Anyways, it's a thought experiment. And so imagine like you're 5 years into the future. I really hope I don't screw this up. You're like 5 years into the future. You're at the airport and you bump into yourself, and it's yourself from 5 years into the future. Okay. So you see yourself 5 years into the future. You're like, hey, what's up, man? And this person, you, is like, man, I'm so happy with where I'm at in life. Like, everything is fantastic. It's amazing. I'm just so fulfilled. Like, I'm so grateful. All of these things, right? Life is as perfect as it could be.
Okay.
What does life have to look like for you 5 years into the future? What do you have to be doing? Let's say professionally too, but if you want to dive into personal aspects, that's fine too. What does life look like in that situation for you 5 years into the future?
Oh, wow. Damn. I need to start thinking further ahead like that. I'm always so in the moment.
That's not a bad thing too.
Yeah. I would love to not live in New York City anymore. Yeah.
How come?
I've lived here my whole life. When you've got like, I feel like I'm just getting too old for it. Like, when you got like 2 a.m. and then some dude's like driving by the apartment with like that explode. I don't know if you have this where you are, but there's like explosive exhausts. Like, back when I was in high school, it was a system. Everybody had a system, and they would like crank the music really loud. But it's like the exhaust that just explode now. It just sounds like the car's backfiring. So when that's going on at 2 a.m, I'm like, fuck me. Why?
Right.
Why? So I would love to all my family is here too. So I can never just abandon the New York and Long Island area. So I'd love to live in a more like reasonably priced place with, you know, a decent amount of land. My dad's in Pennsylvania now. Decent amount of land, and be able to travel back here like 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year, as many times as I want. That would be the thing. Not a number, but like having some open space where that wasn't like, it's not city life, but being able to travel back to like home base or home, you know, like what feels like home for me, you know, as many times as I wanted to the year. I think that would make me really, really fulfilled personally. Fabiola.
What about professionally? What does your professional life look like at that point?
Professionally, I would love to grow the stream to a point where I'm, you know, like that referral network is going. I'm helping people solve bubble problems. I'm helping founders not avoid some of those missteps that I take in the beginning. Actually, and the product that I'm working on too, finding product market fit. I haven't done that. I haven't built anything. I built, you know, we've all worked on the projects, but I haven't built anything that's found the true product market fit. So that's like one of my goals. And I think my best bet is with the project that I'm working on now. So I guess professionally, if those things all happened, I would be pretty happy. I'd be pretty proud of myself in 5 years if all of those things came true.
Nice, man. That's awesome. I think every bubbler probably who hasn't found product market fit yet, or probably most bubblers, probably carry that same kind of chip. I don't know if it's a chip on your shoulder, but I certainly have one on mine where it's like, I want to build something that gets massive and like a lot of users are using it.
Yeah.
So I can certainly empathize with that. And yeah, that's all the questions I had for you. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find you online?
They can find me at my handle my handle on Twitter is at bubble_hack. You can find me, check me out on the Rad stream. The Rad stream, payhouse.co. All the information to the stream is on payhouse.co.
And it'll also be in the link, in the description of this video. I got to stop asking that question because I just put it in the description anyways. So
gotcha.
Maybe it's just to remind me what links I need to put in there. But anyways, thanks for coming on the podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Jacob.
Bye.